I'd like to call to order the December 8th meeting of Bartonville Community Development Corporation. So we'd like to extend the welcome to the public for public participation. So we'd like to discuss the Old Town parking topic. I'd like to ask Mr. Del Nor to come to the front of the room.
Go to the agenda item, or you just give the public participation?
I'm sorry. Yeah, skip public participation. So agenda item, consider approval of the November 17th, 2021 meeting minutes.
To approve. Hold on, there's, looks like a typo in there right above item 4, or where it has item 4, that paragraph above where it has what they moved and seconded. It says Cloud 9, the Cloud 9 thing. I think it's supposed to be the agreement between town of Bartonville and the board. It's just the wording.
I just copied it from the website.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Any other changes? Anybody like to second the motion?
Second.
All in favor? Second item is discussion on adding parking spaces at Old Town Bartonville.
At the last meeting, you had a request for the parking spaces, and I discussed it with Chris, and I felt it was best for him to attend the meeting to talk about that. And so Chris is here. I've got the image where if you want to hand that out, or I can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll hand these out, just send a couple of shots too.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
No, I haven't. You can share.
we can share.
Just have to, I didn't have to.
So what I have is I have this
Oh,
one,
that one.
and then I did 2 little street views just to put on a page 2. So what's been discussed is adding a couple of parking spots for better access to that corner. And just in review of the site, there's not enough room to do actual pull-in parking, your standard pull-in parking, and even an angled parking because of having the culvert there. And we really didn't want to put people directly on McMakin either for that. They really kind of pushed us for one option, which is on the northwest side beyond the culvert, maybe just doing a widening for more or less 2 parallel parking spots. Now there's a bit of a catch to that because there's some safety concerns with wanting to invite people to park there. There's no accessible path, there's no sidewalk. There's also issues with potential of that culvert on the north side. There's no pedestrian rail or any way to really help the public protect themselves. And so we've talked about a little bit internally is potentially just widening that area for a shoulder. That way we're not encouraging pedestrians, we're not encouraging people to park there, but if there's someone who needs to park and go down and look at it or do some minimal maintenance, that gives the ability for someone to park off of Post Oak, away from traffic, and walk to whatever's down there.
Just not label it as a parking
Exactly, because it's not going to be accessible. ADA meaning wheelchair, blind, all those kind of things. There's no real route down into the corner. And I'm purposely hesitating calling it a park or anything like that because it's really not the intention. But
Chris, is this area wide enough?
so it is wide enough. You only need 8 feet to pull off on. So essentially what we'd be doing is widening it to an 8-foot shoulder. We do run into a little bit of issue as you go kind of in the most westerly point of the exhibit I handed out. The pavement starts to drop off to the north into the ditch. And so what we'd have to do is widen that out and kind of steepen that slope. So there will be some fill that we'd have to bring in. There'd be a little bit of work to it. It wouldn't be, you can just scrape off the topsoil and put some asphalt down and be done. And so you're going to have to, the pavement's here and then the shoulder falls off pretty quickly. So you're going to have to build that up and then out there, then do a new course slope and flatten that out a little bit.
How much does all that cost?
Well, the preliminary estimate that I put together is around 12 grand, and that's very preliminary. I want to, if it's something that we'd want to consider more, then I would discuss it with the contractor, our on-call contractor, and just make sure the numbers that I'm looking at are what he's comfortable with as well.
So Chris, if you widen the road, so if you widen the road versus having a pull-in parking spot, are you saying we don't have to be ADA compliant with that?
No, you have the same issue with any kind of an ADA. You need to be ADA compliant with that. The reason we don't have a pull-in parking is because there's just physically not enough room between the edge of pavement and that culvert, where that culvert's sitting there kind of just to the north of where I've got the blue penciled in. There's only around, I think it was 16 feet or so between the culvert and the road. And you need 18 for a parking spot. And you really don't want to put a pull-in parking directly on public roads. And looking at an angled parking is just as bad. Plus then you've got the added ability of you're in the middle of a curve and now you're trying to back out an angled parking on a curve. So there really isn't a good spot to do any kind of true pull-in parking. And even if we did, we'd still run into the same issues as far as how is it accessible.
Say what the grade is there because I pulled 2 people out of it twice so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
When you get snow and ice, they miss this turn. And if they just come off that blacktop down there and
So if we did this little widening, added this shoulder, that would solve that problem. Would at least help it, because it'd give them 8 more feet to get it together and stay on the road.
or I don't know if you've been on that road to see if there's a sign there. Well, that sign was almost hit twice. And the reason it was snow and ice. And tendency to was a teenager and he was going a little fast and tried to make that turn and just right into the ditch. So I had to get out of the chain and pull him out twice. Not him, the same time, somebody else also. But
And something like this potentially makes that worse because now if they do go off the new pavement, they're coming on a steeper slope to get back down to grade. And if they come off pavement and hit grass or something, that's going to slow them down a lot faster than being on slick pavement and just slide an extra 8 feet. The issue for that stuff is really they're coming a little bit too hot into that corner and they're just right in the outside.
That's somebody that turned right onto that road, speeding up to go up the hill.
And they could
Couple
potentially
of
go
teenagers.
straight head on into the concrete,
Top of the
right?
hill.
Into the concrete barrier. They could potentially be even closer to the barrier
Yes,
on
that's
each
correct.
side.
That's correct. Where I put those, the reason I located it where I did is you're just past the rail, which is the white in the photo. If you're northbound or westbound, you're just past that. And I left about 5 or 6 feet between the corner of that and where that shoulder shows. So that's enough for someone to walk, get past their vehicle and be on the inside of the road or on the back side of the rail. We'd obviously want them to be on the back side of the rail if they were walking. But then also kind of that corner point of the actual culvert, like I think I mentioned that earlier, there's about 10 feet there. So there's enough room to do stuff, but it's not enough where, if you've got people that want to play around or something, there's just not enough room to do that.
How deep are you wanting, what's the length of the parking spot have to be?
18. So I think the way I have this set up is it's 2 18s plus 6 feet in the middle, which is enough for the guy in the back to kind of pull out.
Is there enough room for one?
2.
Is there enough room? I guess so here's when I went and looked at it, what I was looking at was probably what the dangerous part is. I was thinking if we came in this way from that angle, but then you gotta get out.
Yeah, so then if you're looking at an angled parking, that means you're making that person back out past a through lane back into their lane.
It's a curve over the ditch.
I don't
It's
know.
not very high.
So the curb on the north side is
Yes.
about 2 feet above the grass. And then on the back side, I think it's a 4-foot culvert. So it's a 6-foot drop off from the back side of that rail.
May have looked at this, Chris, but on the other end to the right-hand side, is there any opportunity there to do a curb cut and potentially pull into the property from 407?
So directly from 407, I didn't look at that. I think there is an opportunity to maybe look at doing an apron, an actual curb cut, but it would definitely be right in, right out only. And you'd have to look at how far back that turn lane goes. We really discourage putting it in that turn lane. So I don't know if the property goes far enough north to get beyond that or not.
It's not a very big parcel.
What does it really need parking down there?
So my understanding is that, there is a little bit of foot traffic that wants to go down there and take photos and look at it. And then there's potentially a bench or some other donation that someone's looking to add to that corner to beautify it a little bit.
It sounds like this might not make sense if these are all options.
That's the tech stop bridge. Is that?
No, as far as matter, no. But what they may get into if there's a tech stack easement through there, and we do anything that would encourage additional pedestrians, is they'd probably make us come and put a pedestrian rail around that. Would be about all they just do.
Mr. Neller wanted to speak.
Yes. Mr. Neller, I'm sorry I didn't make you stand up again, but could you join us in this discussion?
9 Seals Road. And obviously I've come by there several times and somebody's out there with their kids on the statues and horses and that. And obviously not all Bartonville residents, but they come down through there and they see that and they go there and look at it. And I felt it was very dangerous because they're going to stop anyway. And some of them stopped on 407 and some of them just around the bend there. And so anything you could do to make that easier, they're going to do it anyway. And I don't know, the straight in parking, maybe if you had only room for one spot, but the backing out, that's a problem. But parallel parking would help there, I think. But the reason I iterated last time that if you decide to do this, and with one of the board members assisting me, I would like to look at some park benches, whether metal or wood, whatever's appropriate, and I'll donate them in honor of my son. So that's consideration if you do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
This is the area that you are looking at for parallel parking. That spots.
Two, because that was the number that I had seen. Was two. And I honestly didn't look at doing parking internal to it, where you take out some of the existing features to add parking. I mean, that could be an option if that's, you know, the way that we'd want to consider it. You know, what, right where that gravel path is on McMakin, I mean, there's not a good spot because of the signal being there and post oak being there, and you're going to have sight distance issues and intersection issues. But we could look at doing something in there or potentially on the other side of the road and then adding sidewalk or doing something additional if we wanted to do it.
I think the initial thought, just simply because I had talked to Dell about it when you brought it up originally, was it's going to be much simpler. You know, this is a little more complicated, I think, than any of us thought it would be. We thought we'd be able to put one, I didn't know, we were going to do one spot in there. And if that's, you know, that's what we originally thought. So this has turned out to be a little more complicated and a little more detailed than I think any of us thought, at least for myself anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what came through from town staff, is that having me here just kind of talk through it a little bit and maybe work out or discuss any other options and kind of see what we might want to do.
Currently, if someone stops there today and they're walking through that area or such as whatever, they're at their own risk, right?
That's exactly right.
I think like when I stop to go, like we have to stop, the lights go out, or we have to go check it, or if we have to go look at something.
Yeah.
This side. One side.
Right.
This side of, right when we turn on Post Oak, or the area that he's proposing. So I think it would be, and then the landscapers obviously park there as well, or they go in because they have to park their vehicle, and then they take their equipment off to go in.
Yep. Yep. So I think kind of the bottom line, from my perspective at least, is adding the shoulder and doing something like that is definitely appropriate, but from a liability perspective and from an accessible perspective, we can't really make parking there.
Shoulder helps, but it also doesn't encourage people to increase our liability.
Yeah, I think it kind of addresses your thought, is that people are doing it anyway. We'll give them a better option. We're not going to say, come park here. Something along those lines.
my opinion only, is if we're looking at the option of putting the shoulder on, I think we do it for one car versus two, to not promote more people.
And it honestly makes it better in terms of grading and cost because the right at the outside of the corner is pretty flat, but as soon as you come around to the west of that culvert is when it starts to fall away.
I would be in favor of getting a sharper estimate.
For one spot, two.
I'm fine with two. It's not marked for parking. It's not parking. It's just mixed in.
Wants to pull off. Can we get, if we're gonna get pricing on, we get pricing both ways, 1 and 2?
And do you think somebody that's gonna stop anyway to look at it? I haven't seen anybody do it, so I'm not sure. Will they find that over there? Are they tending to go clear around over there? Or are they tending to stop on McMakin and do we know?
Honestly, the width of the road where you basically have concrete on both sides doesn't really lend itself to being able to get off the road clearly. So typically, whenever I go over there to look at lights or trees or whatever, I pull in that area right there that we're currently talking about to get out and walk over. The concern that I had that I was thinking about was I walk over the rocks, but I'm not necessarily sure the bollards that are there in that low area. I'm not sure how good of an idea it is that people are continuing to go through there with kids. I mean, I can just see, somebody falling and busting a knee because some of those rocks are pretty big and they're kind of unstable. So you walk over and you got to watch what you're doing because you can fall down. So I kind of think we need to, if we're going to think about this long term and there's going to be some more activity there, we kind of consider what the path should look like and maybe encourage people to go to the left and stay in the grassy area versus going over the rocks, which is meant for drainage. Just a thought. That's just
I see
something
what you're talking about.
observed.
You're talking about this little drainage area.
Yeah, the drainage, that low spot there where, it was installed for drainage, obviously, but it's got some bigger rocks. And when you step on it, the rocks go, they jump from side to side because they're not packed in.
Yeah, because we don't want to invite more problems.
Agreed,
Right.
agreed.
By putting something tempting to stop. So we may have to look at putting in more of a path or something else. I don't
The
know.
drainage area, you almost have to go over it, don't you?
Yeah, well,
It's-
it looks like there's a grassy area to the far left. So if you go around, it's just your eyes are drawn to the horses. That's the primary objective for most people. They're going to take a picture with, I do with my dogs, people do it with their kids. They go up to the horses, they take photographs. So they're focused on walking towards the horses, and towards the horses is across the rocks.
Yeah, you're talking between that rail and the culvert, right?
Right,
Just
yeah,
straight across as if you're
Right.
going due east.
correct. Because that's where the horses are. The horses are almost directly behind that
If we
low
put
area.
a path in, then we're encouraging.
You are. And this is, it's a dilemma that happens often enough.
Kind of like where do you cut it off? I mean, we've encouraged people by putting anything there. So now where do we stop?
Right,
That's
right.
Go towards the shiny objects.
Hey, I do that. So
Yeah.
don't.
I understand the draw.
You can say that we put the shoulder there because we're landscaping and we're giving access. I mean, it's for the shoulder for access. We're not saying parking, you're not saying come here, but it's the shoulder.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's a shoulder for maintenance, so because your crews are ripping up the ground or whatever. It's definitely a good idea from that perspective.
But then if you had a bench, all due respect, is that going to encourage more people to come there? And where are you going to put that? Of course, it's closer to the stand. Again, we'll talk with staff and with our risk pool because if you're walking over the rock area. I don't know what liability. That location.
So I did look at it a little bit from maybe putting a bench on it or something. And do you have Google Earth? Can you show that? What I was thinking about is there's already on the physical corner. Yeah, that's perfect. On the physical corner of 407 McMakin, there's the sidewalk aprons from the traffic signal. So you could come off of there and extend that walk 10 feet in pretty much any direction. You could continue down 407 or come down McMakin, or you can just come off, kitty corner for 10 feet, put a little platform there and drop it down. So you could do something like that if you're going to put benches out there anyway. At least that way, technically it is accessible from an accessible route because you're coming from TxDOT's traffic signal across crosswalk to get to it. So if you did, yeah, somewhere in that area, it's pretty flat there, and you could do it 10 or 15 feet off the pavement, so you're technically in the clear zone, and give you a little bit of room there.
So you can park at Kroger, and then you can use the text on crosswalk to walk across.
Correct.
I don't have an answer to that. But could you ask, I guess, the town? I'll ask Kroger.
Maybe table this for now until we get the answers on liability issue.
It's just a discussion item. We're not taking any action.
Because I can zoom out a little bit more. I wanted to get another reference for how far of a distance that was from the south. Yeah, because I don't think. Okay. I was gonna say, I was trying to remember if there was access down to that sidewalk directly from that kitty corner parking lot on the south side, on the south. Yeah, I didn't know where the nearest, like say someone did park in that parking lot, how far down they gotta come to get onto the sidewalk.
This is
Down
gonna
the
get
hill,
developed with
quite a ways.
HTF or-
Is it?
Yeah, now if you park up by Kroger's or Chase or something like that, you see 100 yards just to get over to the other side of that red line. That's
And
not
you were
convenient.
talking that parking lot by Dickey's, right? Isn't it, it's steep right there.
There's no
Yeah.
access to the
Yeah.
sidewalk from here.
And I couldn't remember if that was the idea, let's have them park over by Kroger. How realistic is it for someone to park there if it's, hard to get down to the sidewalk and then 500 feet to get up and cross?
So that's the only access right there. Ken.
Driveway, where the driveway's at, driveways.
Oh, that's several hundred feet.
Yeah. But that would technically make it accessible.
Honest to an individual.
Other than adding some concrete sidewalk and building a 10 by 10 pad or something.
That's people from stumbling over the low spot too.
And you guys all know what I mean when I say accessible. Okay.
Accessible for ADA, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you're doing. You're not buying, but you're offering an opportunity that is 100% accessible to get to.
Sounds like that road though, now you're gonna have to buy property because it ends up belong to the school there. Yeah. Well, where the curb is, come
Even
south.
accessible from this side, you have to make it ADA accessible over that as well.
Right, but if you stay over there, making it 407, you don't. Because TxDOT already has crosswalks there. There's already a sidewalk.
there differentiation, Chris, between that being a decorative corner versus a park? I mean, is there any requirements or anything that would change the naming or, you know what I mean?
No, because a lot of towns will do plazas or do little corner pocket park type things specifically for benches. If someone's walking down the sidewalk and they need to take a break, they can just sit down. It doesn't necessarily mean anything beyond that, that you're offering someone the ability to take a break.
Liking that location better. But let's double check on the two different options. The shoulder on post oak and then just adding sidewalk and a bench.
So we have everything we need to.
So I'll cost out a 1-spot version, a 2-spot version, and then bring that sidewalk up and put a little pad.
Anything else?
All right, so any other comments on this particular topic? For now? All right, let's go ahead and go on to number 3. Discuss and consider approval of facade improvement grant request from Tim House for the Bartonville store.
Yep, Tim.
So
Stay if you want. You're welcome to stay. You can hang out all night.
I'm gonna skip.
Oh, come on.
Thanks, Chris.
yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Definitely reach out if you want to talk to me.
Sure, let's stay. Go.
I'm gonna start watching these and see how long they take, and I'll make a future decision based on that.
That's gonna be out here when you.
Okay, I will.
Chris.
My name is Tim House. I'm here representing the Bartonville store, which is your neighbor just immediately over here to the east. And I have presented a specific proposal for putting a mural on the Jeter side of the building. And you have, I believe, a photo of what that is now, a blank canvas essentially. And then there's a sketch prepared of what I have proposed based on an artist's sketch. I would like to tell you up front that even though this has been a specific proposal, after submitting it, I know Dwayne asked, would we consider color? The answer is yes. Tammy showed me some alternatives, or not some alternatives, some examples of work done in Justin and Saginaw. And
Beautiful.
yeah,
Absolutely beautiful.
and I'm here to tell you that I see this as a joint venture effectively between the store and the town. I didn't even know there was an Old Town district. I thought the Bartonville store was Old Town. Until I talked to Tammy and she pointed out that it extends from the monument up. So now I understand better. But nonetheless, this could be essentially the entry to Old Town from the south. I'd like to think that we could work together to come up with a design concept. The concept that I've shown there is essentially intended to display the history of the store, which is, in my way of thinking, the history of the town, because the town and the store started simultaneously in 1882. Now, I guess there was a greater town area at one time going down to Chin Chapel, et cetera. But as far as I'm concerned, Bartonville started with the building of the store in 1882. So I was going to show 3 versions of the store. As you know, from the history, there's been a couple of fires that have taken down buildings and then they've been replaced. So that was the concept that I had shown, that, and that's a sketch by an artist that I worked with previously. I'm literally not married to this artist. So I'm open to, I'd like to propose the concept tonight, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm flexible in working with you all on the design. even to the extent, I know one of the examples Tammy showed me was a brightly colored, just saying Old Town Saginaw, I think, or something. So I'm good with whatever the town wants, really. And this is not just a partnership in that respect. It's a partnership because I own the building, but technically that side of the building is on city property, on town property. So fortunately,
Put it back.
fortunately, it's grandfathered, but it is in the right of way.
We're gonna take the wall down.
It's a legal non-conforming use. That means I get to keep it. So,
So, Mr. House, I have a question. Are you
Sure.
proposing that the mural go from here all the way back here,
now
or
that
just from here to here?
your second version from there to there, that's the building itself. That back area there is more of a little storeroom that was added at some point, and I really didn't want to drift it down that much. So
Okay.
it's roughly 30 feet, and the average height's roughly 12 feet. And the proposal before you is the quote I got from the artist that I've worked with previously. I was able to talk to Mr. Davenport, who did all the work in Saginaw, and Justin. And as I understand it, I think that's right. And his quote, and just off the cuff, was higher, but not terribly higher. Definitely worth considering. I thought he was going to be a lot higher.
That's what I was afraid of too. I think this is an excellent idea, Tim. I'm all for it. Some kind of a partnership forum where, we'll, I mean, from my own standpoint of this group, if you could keep it under 10,000, it would be the best. But I'm personally for it. I think it's a great idea.
I love the idea, but I'm with you. I don't want to go over 10,000.
Frankly, I'd prefer to keep it to 10,000 or less, because I prefer to keep it with this board and not have to deal with multiple boards. So
if you go over 10,000, if you do over 10,000, or keep it 10,000 or under, if you did it as a matching grant. So if the project, let's say the project came out to 15,000 and the board said, we'll pay $9,999, and then the balance be funded by something else, that project doesn't have to, because whatever this board funds, anything over $10,000 of what your money, that's when it has to go into
Okay.
the type
So-
of project that has to be noticed in the paper, has to be noticed for 60 days, has to have public hearings, and then has to have 2 readings from the council, and no funds can be spent after the notice in the paper. Funds can't be spent after 60 days after the notice in the paper and the public hearings. Either way, it still has to be approved by council. So again, it's a longer process if you go over the $10,000. So again, it doesn't, however the board decides, there's just a different process for the amount of money.
whether I've worked with the artist I've already talked to or Mr. Davenport, I think I could direct it to stay under $10,000. So I guess if I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but what I'd look for tonight is possibly an approval of the concept, subject to no greater contribution than $10,000, and subject secondly to a design that this committee can sign off on, maybe at the next meeting or at a future date.
There are 2 questions that are coming to my mind.
Sure.
And Tim, that was around, we talked about the difference between black and white and color. Is the young lady what is her name?
Erica Norwood.
Erica, did she propose just black and white?
No,
or-
she actually said she could do either initially. I was the one who opted for black and white because I was trying to keep it consistent with the general feel of the store, which is black and white. And as you can see from some of the example murals of Mr. Davenport, he's chosen black and white also. And so it's, in some cases, black and white is consistent with the depiction of that era.
He has some.
Yeah, you can.
So I just wanted to make sure we were talking apples to apples when we talk about Davenport's work versus her work, and is the pricing the same for the scope of work?
It was surprisingly close. It surprised me because I did not know Mr. Davenport until
That one's
Tammy
black and white.
introduced me.
There's the black and white, Justin. That's very clever.
Yeah, see, something like that looks almost realistic. I asked him if he uses a projector, because sometimes artists will do that. They'll project a photo up on a canvas or a wall, and they basically just trace it. But he says he does not. He has another approach that obviously yields good results. So
Sure. And the back, the storage and smoker area is what I'm gonna call it, that's on the back of the building. There's that one little, the one area in the back. How does that go away? How does that be hidden from the art that's there? In other words, I see art on the main part of the building and then I see a small white building behind it.
yeah, you do. I'm not a good enough artist to
I
really.
was just trying to envision
suggest
what
that.
that was gonna look like, if it's gonna be a different color, but the whole building is white, you know?
Can you pull up that train picture again, please? So if you look at this train picture, you have stuff
Corner to
on the
corner.
left and the right
Mhm.
that aren't part of this. But did you see that first or did you see the picture?
I was looking at his building first when I was looking and trying to figure out how that left part of the building at the very back is gonna go away.
But I think that's the same concept here. When you look at this picture, the
Uh,
first thing you see is Justin, Texas and the train depot and the train. And then later on, after someone points it out to you, you see the stuff on the side.
Right, you see the front and the back of the building or
Right.
whatever, yeah, is to the
Because
side.
that's a big enough area.
Yeah,
That's what you're gonna look at.
that's the primary focal point.
There would be a way, I'm sure. And again, I'm not an artist, but I'm married to one. So I kind of heard a lot of conversations.
You've learned a little?
I've learned, well, no, I haven't. She'll tell you, but I know that for every issue like that, there's some thoughts on how to resolve it. And
Yeah,
it could be that the artist would want to incorporate that into the artistry.
Yeah,
I don't know.
included in the project. That's why I was wondering.
I'm
if
I'm
that
with
was-
Dwayne. I think it'd look better, Tim, if there was a way to kind of integrate that in some way.
Okay.
Make it.
Maybe I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Sure, go
but
ahead.
the thought that's coming to mind is these horses that are off to the left of the original building. There's not a whole lot of room to put the horses. Maybe the horses, a couple cows or whatever, could
Actually,
go on that far.
That's a great idea.
yeah,
just-
actually, that is a good idea because I could see, these are three-dimensional type images, the way he presents. You could take that little area, that little building, and have it depict a hitching post, basically, where they tie 3 or 4 horses up to. So something like
And-
that could work.
Just to throw out another idea. I'm not as crazy about, I mean, it looks great, the 3 different styles. But when I saw some of the ones like that were in Saginaw and some of that, I'm thinking, when I see this other picture that's got the gas
Yeah.
pumps in front and that, I'm thinking, why don't you paint the gas pumps on the side and make it look like it's actually part of the building? And you could have, the horses tied up at one and make it, if it looked real, like it was still part of the building. I mean, that's just a thought.
Well, it's
But I don't know if you're wanting to do the 3 different styles, but
my original goal, and again, not an artist, was simply to show that there's a history here that a lot of people don't know. Yeah, and I was just I'd like people to connect to Old Town, understanding it truly has an old history, rather than it started in 2005 when you built a park down here, whatever year that was. I don't know. So that was
So
my
you-
goal, but your idea, frankly, something like that, excuse me, in the same vein as that, Justin, there, I could see that looking good. We could make the side of the building look like the old front of the building
that's what I'm thinking.
Couple horses.
with a
tied
couple
up.
horses tied up and maybe an old car pumping gas in front.
Yeah.
With Bonnie and Clyde stand behind. Which is one of the stories about the store. So again, I think, subject to this meeting, Robert's rules and all that, I would adjust my proposal to be more of a conceptual proposal and make it contingent upon keeping the cost less than 10,000 to the city, to the town, excuse me. And it being a design that we all ultimately agree on.
Need a motion for that?
I would recommend that the board not make a motion on approving the project, but perhaps having Mr. House work with staff, or if you're working with the concepts and bringing that in. And then when he gets a final product, so you have the final drawing, then when it's ready to bring that to the board. So you have the understanding that it's going to be a project under $10,000. And then when it's ready for final approval, then bring that final concept for approval. And then you have a product to approve, and then it'll go to council. Because you're approving something without a final concept, you don't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
So we can work together, and when he has that, then we can bring it together to bring you an actual product to approve.
Then it could be an agenda item to approve.
Yes, so you have the concept, you have the understanding that this is something, it sounds that you can get the consensus of the board that this is something that they want to move forward with, and direct the staff to work with you on.
This
Bringing-
isn't only approving the cost, we're approving the design or the
We're not
look.
approving anything tonight.
No, but in the future.
That's between you and Mr. House.
Yeah, ultimately, there will be an approval of a design, which has not yet been presented. But
That
what I'm
approval
asking
is-
for
And
tonight
if you're
is
funding it, you should have some say in what you're funding.
absolutely. And I can tell you, from a timing standpoint, I have no sense of urgency. We are hoping to do a festival in May, late May, and get permission from all the neighbors, et cetera, to do outdoor stage and have some music outside and the whole thing. Maybe if we could find an old truck to park in front, we'd like to do that.
Knower?
But
I know one.
this mural, both artists think it's a 2 to 4 week project. And so we've got time to do it right. And I'd like to do it right with the town's blessings.
Thank you.
If you do a project under 10,000, if he brings it back, if he had something like the end of the month or in January and the council approved it, that would be, you could technically approve something in January and they can start, depending on their schedule, February.
Does this still require council approval
Yes.
after?
Because it's not a project that's any project that this board does because of even if it's 10,000 because of that expenditure and it's not in their budget, yes, it needs council.
This doesn't have to go through all of the, put it in the paper and all the rest of the stuff.
Stand, public notice and all that stuff.
Formality, yeah.
Okay.
Council approval.
I can do one. Give me 1 second. Before you close this item, just let me find out.
Two-dimensional art is just amazing to me that you can paint a flat wall.
I've intended for a couple of days to get over and see that firsthand. I haven't done it yet, but I agree. I'm impressed by it.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
I mean, you want me to stay here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a legal question to see if they can make a motion contingent upon, so that's, I just want to do it the right way.
We don't have to make a motion tonight because the agenda item says discuss and consider approval. And what we're telling Mr. House is that he has the general consensus that we like the concept. And when he has a final design,
You still want to see it before it gets approved anyhow,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that answers my question anyhow, because you'll still want to see it before you'll still want to approve it anyhow, so that just answers my question. So.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, and I appreciate your time. I also was very excited to see how much of the agenda is devoted to the Old Town project. I know you guys, your hands are somewhat tied as to how much you can promote business in this community because it's limited space. So I certainly like the idea of doing as much as can be done with the existing Old Town, keeping the old flavor, et cetera. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next item is Discussion of Old Town maintenance, landscaping and projects.
Really don't have an update from you from last meeting, except for we had pretty much the project that Chris brought you. And I still need some information from you for the.
Yes, you are still looking for information from me from the powder coater. Who do I work for anyway?
But I did find, I was going through some paperwork and I did find the original welder's information and I was going to try to reach out to them. Again, I know I looked up, the business site is not up anymore, but I was going to try to reach out to them again because the last time I know that he was serving and he was out of the country. So I was going to try to reach out to him again anyhow. So other than that, the lights are up and running. The person that, the company that did the lights sent me an email. They did a check on the lights to make sure they were, because last year we had a lot of power issues. And he came out the other night and he did a walkthrough and he noticed there was water leaking. So he sent me an email and said, hey, there's some stuff going on with your irrigation. So that was out of his way. I thought that was great. So I notified the landscaper. So we're making sure that that's getting taken care of. So there was some type of a leak. But other than that, I don't have anything else to report on.
So I got a note. I got to get powder coater information to Tammy so we can get that sign fixed. Yeah, it's actually over on Red Rock. Yeah, Red Rock, right at the border of Flower Mound and
Do they have a sign
Bartonville.
out there?
they do sign on the front of his house. Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I was going to do is sign it on the corner of his property. I was trying to. It's like welding and powder, or welding and powder coating, I think is what it is. Yeah, yeah. How long have you lived here? Have you? You've got a very, very good knowledge and memory about the entire area. I just wish I could know what this guy's name is. But, I have. I talked to him about the car wheels, about getting wheels painted.
I was gonna say, I'll go.
Well, you certainly can. You know what's funny is now that I don't work in Fort Worth, I never go down Red Rock anymore. I always go towards Plano or Louisville. Yeah, near CNC.
Is it,
And see if this
Just
company
north.
name would come up.
is it just north of Hawk? Is that
No, it's
south?
closer to the.
So a little more south.
Right at that
I
border.
will-
Well, if he's in Bartonville, he's got to be on
Past
this
CNC.
side. He's
And
not in
that's
Bartonville, he's on
what
this side.
does-
The old little gift shop.
Ooh, that is.
Gotta be, is it in here?
Yes,
Is it in this area?
yes.
On the corner is a house, so it's not that one.
Well, there's businesses in it. There's the
I'll stop in.
That's Porter Road.
tropical warehouses. You know, they supply all the Walmarts and all the stores with all the fish.
really?
In DFW.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just right
sells Taco
past the
Bell.
Montessori. I want to
Keep
say
going
it's
down.
further down. Yeah.
Oh, then they're not in Bartonville.
No, it's like right, well, it's right at the border of Flower Mound Bartonville.
Keep going. No, keep going.
Well,
Moving
if
your
it's,
street
if
down.
it's down, this is not Bartonville.
That's Flower Mound, yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
this is
going.
Flower Mill.
Oh,
Wait,
well, it's gonna try to support local business, but maybe he's not.
I'll have to drive down there.
Across to, this
Yeah.
is Flower Mill.
Now you've gone too far.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yeah, it's right. Keep
That's,
going.
that's all
Move it
open
up.
property right there.
Kind of in a corner lot.
Yeah,
Corner.
Yeah, it's a tan building.
yeah, it's a tan
Yeah,
building,
yeah.
I think it's, I think it's, I was in here.
What is that above Tropical Warehouse? That's it, right there.
It sits back a little, just a touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, then it is Bartonville.
Yeah, he sits back just a
Oh, I
little
wonder
bit.
if it's Mr.
Nice guy. I mean, talk to him.
He just did a variance on it because he has a, oh, I know. The guy that owns the property, he got a variance because he had a building. The guy that had the little building in the back.
Yeah.
That's who we're talking
Yeah.
about.
See,
What's
we're
his
both
name? He
on the
got a
same-
variance.
Yeah, he's the powder coater.
I know, okay.
See, and I, we're aligned. He's the powder coater.
He had a little trailer in the back and it was a legal non-conforming use and it kind of fell apart. And he wanted to replace it because somebody was living in it and because we annexed him and it was in there. He had to get a variance to replace it. Remember that? Were you not at that meeting? All right, I know who he is. I just can't remember his name. Off the
Right,
top of my
left side.
Still need
Alright.
the number.
head. Got it. There, took care of that for you.
Sweet. Thank you. Is that it, Ronnie?
So, no. I know who it is. I'll figure it out now. Nope. I just need to get out of the office. I'll
Excellent.
drive to work that way tomorrow.
Any other projects, maintenance to discuss? Anything that's come out besides the water leak at Old Town Bartonville Park? All right, I'll go ahead and close on that one. Next one is discussion of marketing, promotional items and advertising of local businesses. Nothing
Nothing
to
for you.
discuss. at
That's
this
just
time?
on there as a standing item in case I do have things to report on. I have nothing this month.
Don't know if Bartonville Center is doing any Christmas.
They are not. No, they were, they're not doing anything.
At all.
What are they got anybody that's going to move in there? I saw a sign about a,
Marketing, promotional, advertising, local business. There was a sign that was advertising car wash coming
Yes.
soon. That sign will be removed tomorrow.
thank you.
You're welcome.
You ever seen that? There's one just down on
Yeah,
407.
but that sign will be removed tomorrow. We asked them to remove it because they contacted us and they were advised that we do not have a use for a car wash. We gave them the instructions on how to do that and how first there has to be a text amendment and that process. And so I'm sure that process will be coming forward if it will get approved or not. I can't say, as we told them, but then the sign went up. We don't approve the signs on that side, but again, we've asked Newquest to ask them to remove it and it will be gone tomorrow. That was, it's just been, it was a crazy week.
Gonna
with
take
that
up
company, so.
over half of that area.
There is a company called HTO that is, they'll be submitting, they've contacted us. Newquest has advised that they haven't signed a lease with them yet, but on the Blanco side, they, on their plan, on their site. They divided it into two. Company is called HTO. And their website, so it's hard to get into their maps. So they took
See
that
what you
one
mean, yeah.
site and this 0.75 acre is was proposed for this company called HTO. And they sell to,
It's a very fast growing franchise.
and it's cold drinks. That's all they sell. That's it. There's no sitting inside, so it's like the Starbucks, but it's tea.
Is it a spinoff of Starbucks?
No,
Nope.
it's a Texas company.
And they're in Texas. They have some in Oklahoma, and they have one in Florida. So, and that's,
But they've split it into two pieces, it looks like.
yeah, so 0.75
And then another one
acres, and
point two
that's,
five.
yeah, so this is HTO.
So back to the discussion we had, that was not part of the 380.
We don't consider it part of the 380,
Okay,
and they know that.
okay,
So we get the full
all right. Full benefit.
benefit of the
Benefit of
tax,
that.
right?
So yeah, look, they're going all the way forward, northern Oklahoma. So it's a fast little drawing. So that one, that's so, we know, and so they're submitting. So they've been in contact with us on the process of how to submit their site plan, and Breaks Plus site plan was approved at P and Z. It's going to council next Tuesday. And
Breaks
all we have
Plus,
right now,
and the Breaks Plus is located.
across the street on,
Children's.
like where you'll see the site, there's a red sign out there.
Okay,
So it's on the next pad site from Showman's, on the other side of
Showman's.
Showman's. That's all we have right now. And we've been contacted we had a couple calls for some different ideas for a potential my brain just lost it. A distillery, craft brewery, and possible restaurant. And they said it was a famous, we could, if an athlete, they said they couldn't tell us who they were representing. And they were looking at a spot in rural business. We told them there was no access to sewer. They said they could do it with septic. So we haven't heard back from them. So anyhow, so that was a call on the 10 acres over on the corner. So we haven't heard back anything on that. And then we've had a couple calls on the property behind 7-Eleven. So people they're just, it's we're busy.
The barrel is. their website says
The Barrel's
they're
still
open
working
February
on
something.
their finish out permit. So they've submitted for their TABC license. I've signed off on that. So that's being processed too. And Marty B's coffee shop is being built, and then he got an addition approved for the variances and approved. He's at a big sign that's going up. So off of IT Neely, the Marty B's sign, the very big sign that he got that was approved through a site plan amendment. Then he had an addition that's being put on the back of Marty B's for a smoker, like a smoke addition. Kind of like a smoky room, yes, or if you will, it was like an accessory building, but it's actually being attached to the building. And approval for his parking lot and coffee shop. That's it. That's very active around there. And then we had somebody come in today to talk about building a subdivision, some 5-acre parcels. It's about 14, 15 lots. So I haven't seen anything on that yet. So it's like, oh, another subdivision. So before subdivisions going on, and it was for 5 acres. And I was like, okay, met our land use plan. I'm like, well, there shouldn't be any problem with that. So Bartonville's happening in place right now. So yeah. Other than that, are there any advertising anything with Christmas and everything going on? Anything else that's went on our plate? The council did approve another position for our office, so we're working on that and just getting ready for the auditor and ender stuff, and just super busy in there. So wrapping up Blue Santa. The mayor was challenged with. Y'all saw my email pleading for help bringing the bell at Kroger on Saturday, and got 2 slots available. So we're just, staff is busy. Just 3 of us in there doing all of that work. So we're having fun.
Future items? Is that what you said?
I don't have anything on that either,
Oh.
except the mural.
Oh, I
Future
would,
agenda items, anyone else have any?
yeah, I'd like to, if you could prepare a summary of the sales tax that we have been able to get in the last year.
Oh, I need to put financials on it. So, yep. And I'll have that, I'll do it being the end of the calendar year with the 380 agreement, we do the sales tax on the calendar year, so we'll be working on that. Probably won't have anything ready for the January meeting for the 21 calendar year because it takes, I'll have the sales tax for the calendar year for 21, but if I want to have a property tax,
The sales tax is all I really want. So we'll have the sales
yes, I'll
tax.
have that.
It's important to see how we're trending based on.
Yep, let's see where we are and what's going on. Since it's free money.
Great, well, if anyone, if we don't have any other open or future agenda items, maybe go ahead and adjourn. Adjourn the meeting at 7:11 p.m. Good number, 7:11.